April 2nd, Sunday, 7 p.m. Well, hey neighbors, and welcome to the Shed Shop. In this video, I'm going to show you how to install your piston into your cylinder on your MS170 chainsaw, and this works for multiple different chainsaws. In front of me on the bench right now, I have neighbor John B's chainsaw. It's an MS170. It's very low hours. It's sat for quite some time, and the crankshaft seals got hard on it, and they went bad. And so the saw wouldn't run anymore. And also, the carburetor got gunked up, and it went bad, and so the saw doesn't run anymore. And so we're rebuilding it. Our piston looks really good, neighbors. We've cleaned it up, real nice. Okay, probably could get a little bit more there, but that's just surface. We don't have to worry about that too much. It's a small saw. Chainsaw Redeemer can only put so many hours into each saw. Okay, neighbors, so I'm going to turn you down to the bench. This is a 30cc saw. Okay, neighbors, as I said, this is a 30cc saw. It's a very lightweight saw. It's a great pruning saw, great homeowner saw. The things you're going to need for this, neighbors, is you're going to need your Permatex or Durco. Some people use black RTV. Some people use red RTV. Silicone. I use the gray Moto Seal. It's fuel resistant. It works good. It's been working out pretty well for me. And then you're going to need some grease and preferably some 2-stroke oil. And basically the first thing we got to do, neighbors, is put our crankshaft seals on. And I've showed you how to do that in other videos. And so I'm going to do that real quick and then we'll move forward. Okay, I've got my crankshaft seals on and I've left just enough space behind them and the bearing. And we didn't have to replace neighbor John's bearings. They're in excellent condition. Desi's we did. They're sitting in the freezer right now to make them easier to install. That's right, neighbors. I put chainsaw parts in my freezer. I put chainsaw parts on my dining room table while I'm eating dinner. I'm crazy, neighbors. I gotta do what I gotta do, neighbors. Okay, so I don't have the tiny, specially shaped ring compressor tool for the 017 and MS170s. These you can use, but they're kind of hard. You can't get it all the way down in there. You end up having to cut this off. It just doesn't work great. And so I'm just going to use this screwdriver trick. And I'm going to show you because most people don't have this stuff. And so you can do it this way. I just urge you to be very careful. Now, remember, you always want to make sure you install it the right way. I know the coil is on the flywheel side. And so my short side will go this way. I did not remove my piston from the crank. But you will look. There is an arrow right here, neighbors. I'm so sorry. You probably can't see it. It's dark in the shed shop right now. But there is an arrow. You'll have to take my word for it. And the arrow always faces your exhaust port. So right now, my exhaust port is facing away from us. Okay, neighbors, now that 2-stroke oil we got out. Listen, neighbors, I like to coat it just a little bit. So I'll put me a squirt in there. You don't need a ton. I just don't like going bare metal to bare metal any more than I have to, neighbors. I don't want to mess nothing up. I'd rather give it a little bit of lubrication and be safe. Okay, neighbors? Put a little bit of oil just right around my piston. You don't want to use too much because you also don't want it to get on your Permatex. Okay, so you want to keep it clean, neighbors. I've got my clean paper towels over here. All right, now we're just going to go ahead and make sure our rings are set in the right spot. Okay, they're very close. And we're just going to start our piston very straight. Okay, neighbors. And as soon as it goes as far as we can push it, okay, we're just going to take our flat screwdriver, and I'm going to show you on this other cylinder in just a moment where I'm pushing, neighbors. And take your time, neighbors. You don't want to mess this up. If you feel like something's not right, take it back out, please. You've only got one cylinder. You don't want to mess it up. This is the temple. This is the heart. You don't want to mess these things up. Okay, neighbors, all I did in there is I used this transfer port opening to go down in and push my rings. Okay, neighbors, that's all I did. We went down in there. Okay, and we pushed our rings. Very little bit at a time. We started with our first ring and then our second ring. And we just go back and forth between those quad ports until we get it. This one was very easy. John's chainsaw has not fought me too much of the way. The only problem John's saw had was it didn't want to give up its clutch. But the Chainsaw Redeemer probably caused part of that. I've sheared 2 flywheels on John B's saw. And we're replacing that. Okay, next, neighbors. You want to keep your hands very clean, neighbors. I've set you on top of my clean paper towels here, neighbors. I've got to lift you up. Okay. Now, it's very important to do this in the right timing and to use the right amount. Too much is better than not enough, but too much will get you in trouble. Okay, you just want a nice even coat. I was getting some of that off there, neighbors. I always go into my crankshaft seal groove first and make sure I coat that thinly, because as soon as I'm done putting this Permatex on, I will go ahead and set all this down in there. And then I will put Permatex on my pan. Okay. And I just like to make sure everything's coated. I don't like to take chances with this stuff because air leaks are not our friends. They come to seek, kill, and destroy your chainsaw. Air leaks are not good neighbors. Remember that, neighbors, okay? Air leaks are bad neighbors. Kind of like a lot of my church neighbors are bad neighbors. Some of my non-church neighbors are bad neighbors too, but that's okay, neighbors. Don't worry. If we just all learn to love one another, the world will get better. Right, neighbors? Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my counterweights down inside, neighbors. Why? Because it will make it easier, neighbors. Just trust me. You got to trust me on that one, neighbors. I can't explain it. Okay. I'm checking my seals. I want them to at least be semi-straight right now. And the bottom's about in where they need to be. And so I'm just going to push them in a little bit on the bottom, neighbors. Okay, that's all. Very carefully. Very carefully, neighbors. Make sure you put your clip back on, neighbors, okay, when you do your crankshaft seals. Don't forget that, neighbors. We don't want to forget components. They're important. They're there for a reason. Okay, neighbors, now that I've got that coated, I'm just checking it, verifying I've got enough, but not too much. I feel, neighbors, the most important place on these small motors for your Permatex, any gasket maker, neighbors, is right here. Okay, right here, neighbors. I've seen so many saws leak when I've redone them right here and here. And I learned in the past to make sure I do a little bit extra there. Okay, neighbors? It's going to be right there. You see? And right there. Okay? They do leak there. So I just do a little bit extra. Not too much. Remember, too much is better than not enough. Not enough is not going to work. But too much is just as bad as not enough sometimes. Okay? And then on this side, I fill my groove first. Okay, neighbors, it does have to be filled. You don't want to go too thin on this. Okay? Fill your groove. Okay. Do your crankshaft seal seats. Normally I will put extra of this out, but I did not do that this time, neighbors. Okay, I like to make sure the whole metal surface is coated inside there. Don't like to take any chances, neighbors. You don't want to tear this all back down. Okay, now that I've got all that filled, okay, I'm going to do extra right here and here. All these places, I want to make sure that groove is filled very well. Sometimes if I'm working on a saw where I'm not taking the pan off, like the 290s, you have to take a bar stud out, and plus they're easier to leave the pan on to remount your motor. I will use a paintbrush like so that you can get from the dollar store. I get them from either Dollar Tree or Dollar General. I can't remember. Maybe I got those ones from Walmart. Either way, only like $2. And they go great for purposes like this sometimes. I use them quite frequently. Even to put on grease sometimes. Especially before I had my cool nifty little grease gun. My little mini grease gun. Okay, neighbors, and that's the other thing. I did you dirty. I did grease his wrist pin bearing. But I did y'all dirty. I'm so sorry. I did not grease. Uh-oh, we're stuck. I did not grease in here. So, I'm just going to do a little bit of grease. And see, neighbors, that's one of them places, one of these little paintbrushes works great because I need to spread it around because I don't want just one goop, but I can't turn my motor all kinds of ways right now. Okay. Again, this is a low hour saw, but it's still, the grease helps extend the life of the bearing. All right, now, I love these 170s. Listen, neighbors, you got to let this sit about 60 seconds. Okay, this one's been setting about that 60 seconds. It always depends on the temperature. The colder it is, the longer it, you got to let it sit. This one I think is probably okay. I just want to make sure I've covered all my areas and that they're covered good. I see a little more right here that I want to get. Okay, neighbors, it's not hard. You don't have to pay me, neighbors. You can do this yourself. But if you don't have time or you don't want to, you can always bring your stuff to the chainsaw redeemer. You can bring it to the shed shop, even though I got no space for it right now. We'll figure it out, neighbors. Okay, now that that's set, basically what I'm going to do, and you can help, this little notch out here is for your oil tube. That always goes to your crankshaft side. And it's a good thing I noticed to point that out to you guys, neighbors, because I was doing it backwards. Chainsaw redeemer is only human. Okay, we're going to very carefully, we want to make sure our crankshaft seals are not getting squished. Make sure they're not out of the groove. They're good. Everything's even. So we'll just kind of hand press this down. Okay, neighbors? That's all. And then we got our 4, I love these because you can mount your pan, and then we have 4 more bolts to screw it to our chassis. And so thank you, STIHL, for making my life better and easier on the 017 through 180s. I wish you would have done this on all the other saws like the 250s and 290s and 025s and 029s and 310s and 390s. Okay, neighbors, I'm just snugging the 2 bases up right now. I'm not going very tight. This is my process. Everybody does it a little different. Some people would go ahead and torque this down right now. I don't like to. I just want to just enough to where my gasket starts to come out. And then I'm going to leave it for a couple more minutes. And then I will tighten it to spec, which is Guten tight. It's a steel chainsaw, so you do Guten tight. You use your best judgment, neighbors. A torque wrench is not cheap, especially the one that STIHL uses. It's like $1,200, neighbors. Chainsaw Redeemer does, I'm sorry, the one for the smaller saw is like $800 and something. Chainsaw Redeemer cannot afford that. I do have a regular torque screwdriver, but I go by my best judgment. And you can do that too, neighbors. On this kind of stuff, you're building your own saw. Most guys that build chainsaws do not use a torque wrench. Okay, neighbors? You don't need one. Just tighten it good and tight, and you'll be okay. But make sure you let your gasket sit long enough to dry a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and start building his carburetor while I let this sit. And then by the time I'm done his carburetor, or even in the middle of the process, I'll feel comfortable tightening these down. I'm just going to go touching my stuff. It's nice and tacky, but I want it a little more tacky than that. My 2 surfaces have touched all the way around. I like it. I'm going to go a little bit tighter right here. And that's it, neighbors. That's just how the Chainsaw Redeemer does it. It doesn't mean it's the perfect way or the best way. It just means it's the way that's been working for me. And sometimes I change my ways because I discover somebody else has a better way than the Chainsaw Redeemer. Sometimes I've been following service manuals and I see somebody else do it a different way and I try it and I'm like, huh, their idea is way better. STIHL should hire them. They're being a better neighbor than STIHL's service manual. Okay, neighbors, that's it. Until next time, remember, be kind to everyone, and I'd really appreciate, give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, comment down below what you think, and if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, subscribe, because guess what? You got to be subscribed to win the chainsaws I'm giving away, like the Husqvarna 240 and the 017. Okay, neighbors? It's not hard, neighbors. It's 3 little clicks, neighbors. We'll see you next time, neighbors.